Hello everyone, Rudros here. Welcome back to the third and final part of the Opus 21 set review. This time we'll be covering the 2 light cards, the 2 dark cards, and a couple of those lovely starter cards, and by a couple I mean all of them. I'm of course always joined by Mr. Eureka himself, all the way from Japan, Jared Wallace. Jared, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How about you?
Excellent, excellent. So we got some spicy stuff to talk about. You ready to delve into those, not multi-elements, but those fancy light and dark? So we'll start with Warrior of Light. This was I think it was the final card of the week. I know it was one of them. I don't remember if it was the last. I think it was the last one.
I think it was the last one, yeah.
And at first, I kind of just dismissed it because I was like, whatever. This is one of those casino cards. You know, you play it out, you reveal 5. It's like Arden. It's like all this other stuff. Then I saw some people using it, and I was like, huh. It's a lot more consistent than like an Arden, and it doesn't have any restrictions. You play it onto the field, right? You don't have to give up your backups. You don't have to have 6 monsters on the field before it goes off. And so I saw someone using it pretty aggro. Like I think turn 1 they did the Goblin to search it, and then turn 2 just jammed it out. Of course, hit 2 really great targets. Like I think they hit a backup and some other forward, and I was like, oh, well, shoot, that seems quite strong actually. I still don't know if this is my kind of card because I feel like I just am not lucky enough to pull off that kind of 3-drop hit. And then it's special, while I haven't seen it used yet, reads very, very well. Again, for some reason, when I first heard of this, I was putting it in the mindset of like, oh, but Shinryu exists. That's so much more reliable. It's a light card. But then again, I think this just occupies a completely different space. I think this is, you build around a bunch of 3 costs, you Warrior of Light, and you go to town, and then maybe you Unga Bunga. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a more controlled, slower version. The aggro is what sticks out to me. How do you see our light legend, Warrior of Light?
Yeah, this one is just really, really hard to evaluate. I definitely thought it was a casino card too. I was like, I think the first thing I said when this card came out on Card of the Week was like, reveal 5, that's a curse mechanic. Like it's just not, it's not made for the average player to wield such powerful text, you know? It's definitely a lot more consistent. Of the reveal 5 effects, I think this is like up more with Mira, where like the deck building cost is like really high, but the payoff is really high too. You know, it's quite solid, and there's this whole huge influx of 3-cost backups that are like, they're just like tutors, where there's like standard units that also get, you know, something else. You can get all of the new crystal backups. There's Lockroad and Astrologian, you know, there's Venera, there's like, you know, all sorts of good stuff. I haven't found like a specific element combo that I really want to be with him, that I feel really satisfied with. The only thing that I feel like really, really good about is that like Princess Goblin searches him and she's a 3. That seems like pretty good. So I kind of want to jam that, but that kind of takes you towards like Wind Water, and that doesn't really make sense for like later in the game. You know, like I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing with it outside of just put the backups on the field, and it's really good if you just discard 4 on turn 1. And if you get 2 backups, and those backups are getting 2 cards back to your hand, it's like you got 2 free backups and a free 9k basically, is what it's like. It's just really, really good cost performance in that regard. So I think that the card is good. I don't know like what I am exactly supposed to be doing with it at any point in time. I've seen the aggro stuff, you know, really, really good when you like, you know, you flip Alphinaud and Bosch, and you're just like killing them, or you flip Alphinaud Bosch, or you flip like Alphinaud Axstar, and then Axstar plays something, and you just got like 4 dudes just going in there. But it's not immediately clear what I'm like supposed to be doing with it, if that makes sense. You know, there is a whole lot of wide open. You can maybe take it in that slower direction. You know, Earth has Kikern and Miner, and like a lot of other good 3 CP backups too. You could take it in a slower direction with like Earth Wind, or with maybe Earth Water Wind, or you know, something else. I don't know really what I'm supposed to be doing with it, and that's like the most troubling thing. Is like I know it's good, I know it's like I know it's powerful, but I don't know like if there's a cohesive deck that really exists besides just jam the 3 drops and see what happens. And that's not really like a consistent game plan against a wide field. You know, if you don't know whether you're aggressive or controlling until like you flip your first 5 top cards, it's kind of hard to plan around that kind of deck. And I don't really know exactly how I'm supposed to be building it as a result. excited to play with the card. I'm excited to figure out. I imagine there will be versions of the deck that this card is based around that I really, really like and that I really, really dislike as well. And I'm excited to find one that I like. So far, I've only seen the aggro version really perform to any level of success, and that's one of the ones that I kind of tend to dislike because I think there's better aggro options available right now. I still think that people, like, we have new toy syndrome right now, but, like, obviously we're going to talk about Regagine, very good, but, like, 13 is still just, like, really good at, you know, killing you, and, like, you don't have to play a 7-drop light card to do it. It feels kind of like Golbez 5 all over again, where people are like, yeah, there's this really cool system forward thing, and I was like, yeah, I don't know about it, but yeah, okay. So, I don't know. I'm excited to see where the card goes. I'm excited to find a deck that I like that plays it. Until then, I think I will let other people cook with the card first.
Fair enough. We'll see where he ends up at the end of the Opus. Next, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Sky Serpent General Rugagine, which I think has been mentioned more leading up to him than any other card in this review. So much so that you've gotten me excited about him, because when I first saw this, or I'm sure when a lot of people saw this, they thought, oh, it's Warrior of Light at home, right? It's, you know, it has all the keywords, but very different spots, right? Warrior of Light, he required a very specific deck to build, but then he paid himself off because he was completely free, whereas this is a light card. So I had all those usual thoughts. Oh my gosh, why would you ever run this over Shinryu? Why would you da-da-da-da-da? But literally just from hearing you hint at it through other cards to this review, clearly you are thinking of a place of like, well, what about these cards that have on attack triggers, maybe combined with an on entry trigger, like Rufus, like Ace, like White Tiger Lysine Nimbus, or Physalis, or whoever your choice is.
Yep.
And what about a lot of them that, like, man, if only they had haste, specifically haste. I don't know if the first strike and brave will matter as much. So then I started thinking, literally just from hearing you talk about it, yeah, what if you jam this out turn 1 with Rufus, and now it's not just the discard, it's now discard, attack again, discard. Like, Warrior of Light is very centered around himself. Rugagine is all about his friends and who he can give them to.
Yeah.
You can even split it up amongst 3 people. It's hard to picture a scenario where that would be relevant. Presumably you're giving all 3 just to one person, and the haste seems the most important. Granted, that all revolves around combat, right? And we've said in so many opuses as the game goes on, well, does combat matter? Does combat matter? Well, sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. So I'll be honest, I don't know what to think of this guy. But you have raised my opinion just from talking to you about it, that I had originally dismissed him. Like, what is the point of this guy? He's a light card. I'm going to brick on him. But now thinking about that specific, you want to get that on entry, on attack trigger right in the same turn, and you're just rushing people down. That sounds quite potent. Sir, I know you've been waiting for him. Take it away.
Yeah, I love this card. This card is awesome. I definitely, when I first read it, I was like, it's just like it's a mountain of keywords, you know? Like, who cares about a mountain of keywords? But I think actually because he has all of the keywords himself and then also gives all of the keywords to somebody else, or splits them up however you want to, there's something to be said for that. I think there's a lot of difficulty in hasting. Specifically, like you generally come out at a CP loss when you haste things. You know, like if you play like the old thing was like Zidane Sage or whatever, right? Yeah. Or like, you know, Gilgamesh and Sage, or maybe you had, you know, there's so many different things. But like you can't really like haste Rufus without paying for the haste. You have to Ramu him or whatever, and that is. It takes away the economic advantage that you're getting out of it. Like you lose the discard that you got from your opponent because you also discarded to make it happen. Rugagine kind of cheats that because he's just a big dude all by himself. You know, he gives the keywords and he is a haste giver, but he's also doing it himself. And I think there's something really, really understated about how powerful that is, because you know, it's also the other thing is like dealing 1 point of damage with like a haste person doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
Dealing 2 matters twice as much, right? And then he also does it the next turn, and he's also a 9k. He also has first strike, so you can't really block him, even with, you know, Warrior of Light. All you have to do is give him one of the extra keywords, and he trades like straight up with a Warrior of Light. You know, it's I think the card is very, and I guess the other thing is like a lot of the times you would see like these kinds of aggro approaches, like your opponent goes Sarakolka, you play your aggro thing, and then they do Cecil, and your attack stops. You're not allowed to attack anymore or whatever, right? Well, Rekujin can just keep attacking into that. Like, he doesn't care if you are going to block. He doesn't care if wall comes out. Like, he can make Rufus a 10k first strike, so that can trade with a wall, too. It's like, I don't know. I think the card is massively overperformed in my testing. I think that the card has just been great with basically every attack trigger. And I think, obviously, the biggest one for me is going to be Rufus. I think it just works so well with that card. I expect to see, like, people play Mono Ice with it. Obviously works with Lastwell too, works with Faceless, so it just seems like a total shoe-in for that deck. I would play it in there all the time if I could. There's other stuff to do with it too. I don't think it's bad at all in even like Ice Lightning. Granted, that deck does not have a lot of slots, but it works with the Rufus. It works with Sephiroth too, to immediately get an attack trigger out of that card. You can haste your Vincent and just give it Brave, attack with it, and then immediately use the freeze ability to. I don't know. It works with everything. Yeah, it's the card that like I didn't think did anything, and then like the more that I play with it, I'm like, this works with everything. It's like salt. It goes on everything. Like you really just want it on everything, and I want it to. Yeah, it's been great. I honestly believe that. This is the card that I would expect to be like the breakout card of the set, especially for like the World Championship, because aggro has really been limited to like 13, and now with this card, you can go from like hard aggro to like mid-range with an aggro slant without even trying. It's like it's great. I love it.
Awesome. No, you got me excited just how happy you were. Yeah. All right, we'll see how salty he ends up being with that. We're going to move away from Light, come down to Darkness Manifest. We saw this one pretty early because this is the pre-release promo.
This is the pre-release promo, yeah.
And as many times as I read it, I don't know what to think of this card because sometimes I'll read it and I'll be like, wow, this card sounds really strong. And then other times I'll read it and I'll be like, this card doesn't sound very good. His final effect, the fact that he just leaves the field, break a character, again, those are pretty rare. Usually they have to go to the break zone, so that's quite strong. You can do it yourself. You can bounce it. He obviously is going to feel a lot better if you can pay him for his reduced cost, but that's also very specific, so I don't know how likely that is to come up, like how often you could actually do that, so maybe you're paying 7. I've always had a soft spot for these like damage over time effects like Omega. Sophie was kind of like too much of a version, but like these slower ones. Man, that being said, is this stuff kind of relevant? Because you really got to wait all the way to your main phase. Like, clearly, the leave the field is supposed to return some of the investment. That, like, hey, even if they kill them right away, you get to break anything you want on their board, which is really nice. But light and dark slots are just such a premium as is, and, like, I don't know if I want to pay 7 for this guy. So, clearly, I'm very conflicted. How do you feel about the Manifest of Darkness within your heart?
I think this card is completely limited to wall. That being said, I have played this card in Wall, and it was good. It was just like, it was pretty good, I think all by itself, it's a little underwhelming. Like, it's not bad at all. Just like, if you were just going to play one of it in your Wall deck, just as like a nice little, recursive threat that also puts in damage and sometimes has a decent, exit ability, it's quite solid. I think where the card really shines is when you play it with Arc. You didn't really want to play Chaos in the Wall deck. It just didn't really make sense. Too expensive against like Mono Water, like a little too clunky in a 4-color deck in the first place. This one, it's a little bit easier to kind of get the ball rolling with it. I think it sounds like the one card of each element, or one character of each element restriction on this. It sounds like it's going to come on like turn 5, but really when you're playing like all of these multis, it comes online on like turn 2 or 3 sometimes. Oh, wow. And I've had games where I kind of get to play like 2 backups and then just immediately play Darkness Manifest against aggro. And that has made a lot of difference. The card is very, very good against aggro. I didn't think it would be, but it just does. You just sit there, and your opponent is taking damage every turn, and they have to attack into it eventually, and then it trades with something, and then the leave trigger happens, and then you get to trade with another thing. And if you have Arc, you also get to kill another thing, and they discard cards. And it's been really, really good in that. The only thing is just like 5 dark cards, even if you're only playing like 2 Arc and 3 of this, or the reverse. It's just a really, really huge investment, and that is difficult to swing in a format where like, there's some like hard aggro that's like coming on and trying to kill you really soon, or like the other big thing is like the Firewind Sedaine, notoriously really, really good against Chaos Arc because you have to do that. This one, it's not as bad into this, but it's still pretty dang bad if they like leave you stranded with Arcs in your hand and you don't have any more Darkness Manifest. And I'm not sure that it's really the angle of attack that Wall is looking to take this set. That being said, it is a very, very potent option, and I would expect to see it at some point. It is just really, really good to have a cheap forward that reduces Arc to 2. That is like the bottom line. It is just really good to have that. So,
excellent. We'll see if he puts anyone on that clock of you got to kill me this turn, or you're just gonna die at the start of my turn. Finally, last but not least for these light and dark and our signature card, this is Mr. Jack Garland. Very interesting for a new category that its main like searcher is this dark legend. That just, I don't know, gives it a kind of a different angle that I'm used to. Yes, obviously, if you're playing the Strangers of Paradise thing, you got to play Jack because he's the searcher. And of course, if you count him, whatever he searches out, he's basically a soft 1 CP 9k Brave. Nothing wrong with that. It's hard to see his action ability coming up much. I'm sure it's very thematic because, again, he fights Garland or whatever in the game, but there's just not a whole lot of, unless you're like facing a mirror match, I just can't see that being super useful, but it's there just in case you need it. Yeah, I feel like there's not a whole lot to say about him just because he's very straightforward. If you're playing the Strangers of Paradise package, you're going to run him so he can search out something and immediately turn all of them online because he'll be the second body for it. So seems solid with that package, and I can't imagine you playing him outside of that. How do you see him?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. He's good if you play the stuff. I've tried versions of Wall that play this instead of Darkness Manifest. The card is good. Like, when you draw this and you play any of the other party members right next to it, it's really, really good. It is also very, very slot intensive, and I don't know if that's where Wall wants to be. Like, you can't just, like, jam 2 of all of these and, like, 3 of this and expect to fit, like, multi-element cards like Wall and Cecil and, like, these other stuff. Is it the best version of Wall? I don't know. I do think it is probably the version of Wall that has the best anti-aggro tools available, because if you play this, you can just always go this Neon. Like, there's never a time when you're, like, locked out of taking that on like turn 1 against Vanille Hope and stuff like that. And this guy does have Brave, and he will kill your opponent really, really quickly. I think that was something that I underestimated when I was playing against 13 with this. Is like a lot of the times when you make these like plays where you like go and extend against 13 to clear their board, you're kind of left with like a really, really slow clock. But because Jack Garland, like, you can't really attack because then you're gonna die on the crackback or whatever. So, but because Jack has Brave and Ash boosts him to like 12k, you can just keep a swing with him every turn, and he's just like totally cool with it. Like, there's no issues at all. So he was better at racing than some of the other options that I had. Probably about as good as Darkness Manifest, and or maybe a little bit better in that regard, depending on if you had Ash or Neon on the board. So yeah, I think it's very, very solid. I think it's a little more soft-spoken than the other options that Wall has. Wall has like a lot of really, really techie, cool stuff that it can do. Like the Cecil package is obviously really, really potent that we've been playing. Darkness Manifest is obviously really powerful with Arc. I think this one is a little more like straightforward. I'm gonna play 2 dudes and then I'm gonna control the board, and it's like a really, really straightforward approach to the game. I did like it a lot when I played it, though. I thought it was way less bricky than the Darkness Manifest, and he works, again, the whole package works really, really well with Cecil. So if you're going to play Cecil and the Jack Garland dudes, then I think that's just a good way to go about Wall right now. I would be very satisfied with taking that to an early tournament, I think.
Nice. That's high praise. Well, sir, that's technically it for the main stuff of Opus 21, but we're going to touch on those starters. I've got Onion Knight on the screen here. Full disclosure, I know these have been out for a minute. I haven't tested with any of these myself, so a lot of what I'm doing is hypothesis. I'm sure Jared has at least seen some of them, so maybe he can give a little more insight. As I wasn't a huge fan of that Mysidia collection set, because other than these new cards, I didn't think many of the old cards were super great, but the next anniversary set looks quite good. Anyway, all that aside, let's jump into Onion Knight. These are all super crystal intensive from what I know. He just reads really well. He's a 4K. Wow, I didn't even realize he had haste. 2 crystals, search out any DFF forward and play it onto the field. And I think one of the hidden techs of a lot of these is that there are a lot of forwards that are just randomly DFF that you maybe didn't even realize they were DFF that, we'll be playing. I'll see someone pull something out and I'll be like, you can't grab that card. Oh, well, look at that. It's a Mysidia card. Okay, I guess you can.
Yeah.
So because of that, the range of a lot of these cards are huge. His special is very specific. I don't know why it had to wait to block, but he sounds like he reads really well. How good's Onion Knight?
Yeah, this one was pretty. So I made, and along with Kaka, we made a fire water DFF that kind of focused on Ferris and Lena, and like the Warrior of Light package, Refia as well. Did pretty well at Japanese nationals with this, and so that's where most of my experience with these cards come from, was testing for that. In the fire water deck in particular, your usage of crystals was always better spent on Lena, because you kind of got a 2-for-1 in that kind of exchange. That being said, Onion Knight was still good in the deck. It was very, very good in the deck. It was great for searching Zidane. It's great for searching Warrior of Light. And additionally, if you're playing it in some like other packages, you can also get, Lulu is a great target for this. Tidus comes out of it too. The Legend Tidus comes out of it too. Those are just randomly DFF cards. So there's a lot of good targets for the card. It's very solid. If this is like your only big crystal payoff, I would be a little bit wary of playing crystals for this. I think you're going to want to also have, like a Lena or Cyan or other like some other big payoffs, or Shantoto perhaps. He's not the best, I think, but just a very versatile one, very good. Really, really good at pushing damage, especially because you can bring like Zidane or the Multi-Furion and stuff out of them and just immediately put in 2. So yeah, good card. No complaints. But a lot of times it wasn't my best way of using crystals, so I kind of had 2 of them in the deck at any given point in time. I think that's a pretty good starting point for a lot of the crystals, is to probably start with 2, and then if you really feel like you have a lot of crystals left over, yeah, sure, go for 3.
Yeah, very fair. Next, we have this awesome-looking Cloud with his Kingdom Hearts art. That being said, this effect doesn't read well. I'm sure this deck is capable of just crapping out a bunch of forwards because it just reads like it is. So maybe it's actually not that hard to get to like a 9k ping, but it just, because you have to have other forwards too. Like, well, okay, what if you're in top deck mode and this is the only guy you draw? Like, I don't know. He almost, like, the fact that I'm like, wait, is this better than Opus 8 Cloud? The fact that I'm even thinking that makes me think he's not very good, but I don't know. Is he any better than he reads?
Yeah, so when I first read this card, I thought that the neck on the card was going to be like, well, I don't want to use my crystals for this when I can use my crystals for other stuff. I actually think paying the 2 crystals for him is really, really easy. I think that's the easy part of the card. I think the hard part of the card is getting it to do 9k. Usually when you want to be trading on board against decks, when you don't have the forwards to support it, like, you got Rufus, you got Sephiroth or whatever, and you need to kill a 9k. Well, you lost the forwards because you're playing against that kind of deck. So I think there's some kind of hidden anti-synergy between, you can play him, but like actually getting to the 9k when you need it is easier said than done in reality, I think. So I think this is probably the worst of the fire DFF cards that came out of this starter, but
fair enough. Let's see if Furion here is any better. I like the way this guy reads. Again, I don't have any practice with him. Granted, 7k is like, sometimes that's relevant these days, sometimes that's not, so that's kind of a weird spot. But I really just like his second effect. Maybe he won't stick around for it, but I just envision this world where they're cracking monsters and backups and things are dying, and you're just like kind of getting this slow trickle of crystals coming in. Again, he is only a 5k, so maybe he dies before that happens, but for how cheap he is too, I like the way he reads. How is he in practice?
I think this is probably the best of the fire cards for me in practice, because Bart searches him, it's really very, very simple. Like, it's just, you always have access to the card. So if Bart gives you a crystal and searches him, then he comes in, kills a dude. That's always gonna be 2, right? And then you get another crystal because you killed it with the fear effect. Additionally, you're totally right. You get this like slow trickle of crystals that you otherwise just wouldn't. You know, like your opponent gets punished for cracking backups. You know, you get rewarded for killing stuff on your opponent's turn. Like I would often cast Atomos by paying a crystal, and then Furian's on the board, so I would just get the crystal back. It was just like I got a 1 CP Atomos or whatever. And the other really big synergy with the card was Glaciella was just fantastic with this card. I would have Glaciella and Furian on the board, spend a crystal, kill a dude, Furian triggers, get the crystal back, and it was just every turn you just got to Glaciella for free, basically, is what it was. So this card was really impressive for me. I think this is probably one of the bigger reasons to run the crystal package in the first place. Is just his effect is very strong. I think he works really well with the new like Letia and stuff like that. These kind of effects that buff the damage your fire forwards deal. So like Dijin, Letia, Primal Ifrit, these kinds of cards. They're all quite strong, I think, and they work really well with cards like Furion. And I'm excited to test more with this going forward. I think there might even be, because Cyan and stuff, there might even be an angle for like mono fire crystals at this point, because you have the 6 crystal backup. You can kind of do what you want with Cyan and that too. So
nice. Very nice. Let's check out the ice ones here. We've got Lady Toto. She usually gets pretty good cards. She obviously has a pretty potent special, but how often do those come up? Her range of targets that she can pay to and revive any DFF forward of 5 or less, that's got to be a huge range of targets throughout all the ones in the game. I don't know who the primary ones are, because again, I'm just not familiar. I couldn't tell you, oh, these are the DFFs right off the top of my head. Obviously, we just saw the cloud. So she reads super duper well. Is she as strong as she reads?
Yeah, so I have played a little bit less with the ice version because it was immediately clear to me that the fire stuff was kind of like the easiest to like go to, and while Terra is really good, Shantoto kind of had like some name clash with the other Shantoto, and it wasn't immediately clear how it was supposed to be winning games. Whereas it's very clear that if I played the fire water version, I was going to be locking people out with Refia and Ferris and stuff like that. It's very easy to assemble a board where you just can't lose anymore against, especially against aggro decks. It was a lot less clear when I was playing ice how I was going to actually win the game, and so I kind of opted against that. I have less experience. However, Shantoto does read really well. I played against a few people who were playing the Fire Ice version, and while Refia is really good in that specific matchup because as it works, you don't really get punished for playing both Shantotos in that version. So you play the 4-drop one and the 5-drop one, and a lot of the times the 4-drop you play the 5-drop one more aggressively, and so that's kind of like where your crystals get spent, and that's the one that hits the board more often. However, because you have crystals, the 4-drop one has the hand ability that's actually really good too. And you can use it to pay for the S ability here. So I think it's kind of a trick that they wanted us to think that the Shantoto was competing with the other Shantoto, and I really think you're just supposed to play both. I think they kind of both work together very well. They're both DFF. They both have crystal abilities. You can use the 4-drop one in your hand while the 5-drop one is on the field. You can use the S ability, and yeah, it's just been really good throughout. I think that the primary reason that you would be interested in playing a 5 or less specifically is you can get Shinryu with that. That is a really good target for this, although obviously competes with Bart's, and I'm not really sure if you can kind of play both. It's pretty sketchy at that point, so maybe you just play Bart's and you just say it's 5 or less, but really 4 or less is just really where we're being content with the card. It's been great in my limited testing with the card. Admittedly, it's just been really good.
Nice. Next we have Terra. This is one of the few I actually got to see in action, strangely enough, off a Warrior of Light list. Someone hit a Warrior of Light and they had another DFF and it got revealed. And I was surprised how strong it was. So a discard, you immediately get a crystal, and then her action ability, you can spend that crystal, dull freeze anything, and draw a card off of it. Like, shoot, kind of natural ice without crystals would love a card that did something like that. So yeah, she really impressed me in the little bit I got to see her. Like, especially, I've always liked kind of cards that have that self synergy of, hey, I feed myself this crystal, and then on the next turn I can immediately spend it for this other thing. So yeah, she's really nice. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is like I think this card is actually maybe the best individual card of all of the DFF stuff. First of all, it's playable by itself without any DFF synergy because you can just jam it in the FF6 deck. it just works with the FF6 deck because you don't have any other Terras and you needed more discard effects, and it just ticks both of those boxes. You know,
lock is Dissidia for some reason.
And lock is and also lock is Dissidia for God knows why. But yes, lock is also Dissidia, so there is also that. If you do get a crystal off of this, the action ability is way better than I thought it was. I think there's a huge difference between dull freezing a guy on your turn and dull freezing a guy, holding the ability to dull freeze a guy on their turn, and then that also going all the way around, and then it's still frozen by the next turn, and you get to draw a card too. Yeah, the card is just really, really good. If I am playing crystals with ice, this is like the thing that I'm most excited to do with, and like it gets me the crystal and it gives me a way to spend crystals over time, and I am just like all about this card. This card is amazing. I so wish that I could have played it in the Firewater version. It's like one of the best crystal cards, but like you just can't, you know, it doesn't line up in a way that works. But yeah, crystal decks that involve ice going forward, I imagine that this card is like the reason that you reach for that. Is that deck any good? I don't actually know, but yeah, it is just, you know, standalone good card. Sarah clone that also has extra synergies, and if you get to use the active ability, especially more than once, it is just really, really strong.
Yeah, I'm glad to see Terra get something a little more straightforward, so well done on her design. Here we have Noctis. I haven't heard anyone talk about him, and maybe because he's just kind of tricky to use, you can't even cast him outright unless you have another DFF forward. I mean, that doesn't sound too terrible, and then he's a 3-cost 9k with a burst, so way above curve, right? But he breaks a forward, but it's got to be dull, and we just know what a pain that can be for ice. So he reads like one of the weaker ones just because he has all these conditions, but it is also spot removal, which surely that's never bad. Have you seen Noctis at all?
Yeah, I've played with Noctis. So I actually played with Noctis outside of crystals because you'll notice that he doesn't require any crystal synergies at all. So I've been playing because I play him alongside like the Y'shtola and Shantoto, and Vincent is another DFF. There's just like randomly a lot of ice DFF characters just existing out in the open, and Shinryu as well as a DFF, so you can Shinryu into him. I've played him in mono ice. I've played Une with him. He was really, really good, so I just played one, you know, and just like searched it off of Shinryu, plopped it down, killed a dude, and then cast a summon, blink him, kill a dude. It's just, yeah, it's a very solid card. It's not super sparkly. It's not going to solo your opponent or anything, but like it is deceptively easy, I think, specifically in mono ice or in the DFF deck to kind of line up these situations in which he's really good, because you know there's that new Shiva that dulls and freezes for one, and you know comes back in your hand. It's deceptively easy, I think, right now to, especially in the dedicated ice decks, to enable this, and there's no like cost requirement or anything like that. It's just a really good body that stays behind afterwards. You know, a 3CP 9k is quite solid, and yeah, I've been pretty impressed with the card. It's not the card that's going to be like, yeah, I lost to this card. It's the card that kind of like puts the final nail in the coffin. It kind of helps you. I guess it's like the mayonnaise on the bread for a sandwich. You know, it's not like the thing that you thought was like really delicious about the sandwich, but it kind of helped tie everything together, and I think that's a pretty good assessment for the card. So.
If I ever play Noctis, I'll tell my opponent, prepare to be smothered in mayonnaise as he comes down. Next, we have Warrior of Light. This one I did see in a single match, and I don't want to be too biased off of that one match, but at least in this one particular match, he wasn't very impressive. He just couldn't stick around. He died right away. Like, I'm assuming the whole point is that he's supposed to be the one that gathers all your crystals, and it's kind of nice he can protect himself, although his body's so tiny. Yeah, he just didn't seem overly impressive compared to some of the other stuff, but maybe that was just a bad showing for him. Have you seen him to be any better?
Yeah, so I actually played him in the Fire Water Crystal deck. Okay. I know he's not fire or water, but he's kind of like Gao. If you get him back with Lena, he just gives you the crystal back immediately. So he's like a free forward off of Lena, kind of like a little Viking. Yeah. He comes out of Onion Knight and gives you the one back. Also, he's Job Warrior of Light, so he's just good for when you're playing like the Ferris, the Lena, the Refia, and stuff like that. I had a few situations in which I played Bartz to search for him and then just discarded Zidane to play him. Like it's so I think you're kind of supposed to cheat him in off color more than play a dedicated like Wind X deck. I had a lot more success cheating him in Fire Water than I ever did playing Fire Wind specifically. That didn't really feel like a good deck. But yeah, it was very solid. It was never the standout card. That being said, I do think it's probably the best of the Wind DFF cards that we got. I think that the other two are not very good. We'll talk about those in a minute. But yeah, this one was very solid all around, I think.
Nice. Well, you mentioned the other Wind ones. Let's get to Cecil here. So I was excited when I first read this. And again, this is another one I got to see in action. He has 3 field abilities. And you're like, and it's all this like protection and protect your friends and buff them up. And so you're like, well, certainly 3 field effects have got to be good. But he kind of just has Yuzuki syndrome to me in that I really like Yuzuki and she's very good against certain decks. But then there's other times she just doesn't do anything. And at least in the little I saw of Cecil, it was the same thing. It was like, well, you can't target him and everything else is 2k. And I think my opponent was like, all right, Hecaton Kyre, 8k to the board. He dies. They lose their power. They all die too. It was like, oh. All right, well, yeah, there you go. Or, okay, Shinryu, break everything. Okay, Shantoto, wipe him out anyway. And it's just like, man, for a guy with 3 field effects, he didn't seem to do anything. Do you feel the same way about Cecil?
Yeah, I tried a little bit of this in the at the Firewind shell when the Mysidia set first came out, and it's very odd that he gives himself 2 forms of protection and then he gives everybody else the buff. I almost think I would have liked the card better if he just didn't care about anybody else and just buffed himself completely. Or if he, on the flip side, people could target him, but they like couldn't target your other stuff. You know, if he was like a totally selfless paladin, I think that would have been a lot better for the card. Yeah, it was. It's not a bad card by any stretch of the imagination. It's like it's just a card that I can't see us slotting at any point in time. It like the S ability was weird. I would never want to like play the Earth Cecil and then change to this one. I would always want to get the other 5 CP one. And I think they kind of wanted us to play that one instead of this one if we were gonna play it, because that one is also DFF. So like, yeah, I don't know. It was weird. I didn't really enjoy my time playing the card. I tried 3 because I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna make Zidane 9k, and you can't block Zidane anymore. It's like, well, Zidane kind of already can't be blocked, so it's kind of fine, you know. Yeah, just didn't have a good experience with it.
Well, what about our last Wind guy? This is Tidus. He's got Knee X Burst. Essentially just says bounce anything, which is of course nice that there's no restrictions. I did see this one as well. He felt impactful the turn he came down because it felt like a lot of things were happening. You bounce, now I draw, and I gain a crystal. So it felt like a 3-for-1. How good was that really? Well, I don't know, because again, bounce is only so. The draw and the crystal, like, clearly, I wonder if they envision this like some kind of Bismarck or Garuda, where like, well, as you keep bouncing, he's just going to draw cards and generate crystals for you, and that's going to be super strong. But I have never seen that happen, nor do I know what kind of deck you would make to get that continuous value. So he basically just seems like his entry and then he's done. And again, he seemed fine for that. But yeah, I think he seems like if you really wanted to like abuse him, you need to find some way to keep drawing and getting crystals off of him. What's your experience with him?
Yeah, that is basically the exact same. I tried it. It was like, it was okay when I played it. But 5 was kind of expensive for the crystal deck. Like, you kind of tend to play like a tempo aggressive sort of style because Onion Knight and Zidane and Warrior of Light are all really cheap and they have haste and they want you to, you know, keep going with that. But Tidus kind of promoted a style of play was like, well, I have to keep bouncing my opponents forwards to really keep doing anything. And that didn't really work with the other cards that I was playing. I feel like we're supposed to play it in like a wind water deck, and I'm just like, that's not a deck. Like, it's just like, it's not like nothing's happening. Like, I don't have anything to do with my crystals if I do like that, because I don't know. It was just nothing really felt like it lined up when I played the Tidus. It was just like, it was very okay. I think if I could continue, just like if my opponent was playing like Ice Lightning and just like bouncing their stuff every turn, and I was being really annoying, I think I'd be really happy with it. But like when my opponent's like playing Wall, I don't want to bounce anything. Like, it's a very bad experience to bounce anything. And just yeah, I don't know. I didn't really enjoy it at all. So
that's fair. Well, last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Bartz here. He's obviously the searcher. You can search for any DFF character, not even just a forward, so you can search backups. Only restriction is it can't be light or dark, and then you get a crystal on top of it as well, so it's easy to see why people talk about this card so much. His action ability is just a way to get one other crystal. It seems pretty easy to get online. I don't know how like relevant it is. Like I don't know if there's like this, oh my gosh, I was gonna die, but then I removed Bart's, got that final crystal, and that saved me kind of thing. But it's nice to just, you know, he gets a little extra value after you've killed him. He just seems incredibly generic that you search for what you want, so I'm sure you can tell me what kind of targets are you searching for with this guy. How is Bart's helping you out?
Yeah, we were doing most of our searching for, like, Furion is just the very, like, clear and far away thing. It's just like, you could discard to, on turn 1 against, like, Vinyl Hove, to play Bart's, search Furion, play Furion. And it was just like, you had 2 crystals set up, you had a couple of forwards, and it was very, very fine, you know? Or, I mean, the best way to do that is to, you know, have done that after you've gone first and you already had crystals, or, you know, like you had some kind of follow-up. It's very relevant that he has Warrior of Light. You can search him with Arya and Sarah FFL. Very, very impressive. Worked really, really well in the Firewater deck. Set you up for crystals. Additionally, we went through a testing phase. We didn't end up playing it in the final build where we had Meath. And it was very interesting to just play Meath and discard Bart's and search another copy of Bart's, because you're just going to get another... It was just like saying Meath just gave you a crystal, basically. Turned it into a crystal backup, kind of got rid of a dead card, potentially. It was good for searching the Bart's, too. Yeah, it was relatively impressive all around. I think this is probably one of the better additions out of the DFF thing. It works, obviously, really well in the Warrior of Light deck. You know, it was just stand up there, because... if you like Sarah FFL, you could search for like Refia Bart's or Ferris Bart's, depending on what you're playing against, and then just play Bart's, get the Warrior of Light, immediately play Warrior of Light, and then Refia, and it's just online on like turn 2 if you want it to be. It's very, very quick. Yeah, I had good experiences playing the deck. It was just very, very solid. I think that this card in general is just going to be great for all of the DFS stuff going forward. I imagine I would be very happy to Bart's search for Noctis, or Bart's search for, you know, Shantoto, or Bart's search for Terra if I was playing the ice stuff. I think maybe it's even at its worst with the fire cards, because they're like the only thing that really goes with it is Furion. But even then, it was just great. I think it's basically just always going to be good if you're playing a good assortment of DFF and you can make use of the crystal. So
awesome, folks. That is oops, I keep hitting the wrong button here. Taking out the wrong image. That is a wrap with every card from Opus 21 Beyond Destiny. Major thank you to Jared for joining me for this, going through this process. Thank you to everyone watching, being patient with us. Jared, are there any shout outs or anything you want to give as we wrap up here?
Yeah, so I write for FFC, CG, Crystarium. It's been a little while since I put any stuff out, but yeah, I write for Crystarium. Shout outs to them, whole team, Team Flat Earth. Sarcastically though, a lot of us we've got a member at Worlds this year. Woohoo! Shout out for Ryan. Shout out to all of my JP crew. I know you're not going to watch this, but you know I hang out with Kaka and Sid and stuff like that. So yeah, do a lot of testing with them. I think that about wraps it up. Yeah.
Awesome. I've got the link to the Crystarium in the description of the video, so you can check it out there. I know they do limited set reviews as well. Thank you as always. He's got his up. Thank you as always for joining me, sir. Folks, let us know which cards did you disagree with us on that you're like, no, actually that card's amazing, or no, that card sucks. You just don't realize what your favorite cards are, all that good stuff. I wish you a very great Opus 21. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And until next time, take care.
Bye. Thanks for watching.